Penguin Random House Canada Audio presents Elephants in My Backyard by Rajiv Surendra, read for you by the author.
To Seth Roland Baird, Editor-in-Chief and Chief Editor. Ich sage auch danke. Every life is in many days, day after day. We walk through ourselves, meeting robbers, ghosts, giants, old men, young men, wives, widows, brothers in love, but always meeting ourselves. James Joyce, Ulysses. Chapter 1. When I was a kid, my parents would dress my two sisters and me in traditional Indian garb and cart us off to the Hindu temple in Richmond Hill, where portly, bare-chested Brahmin priests in white loincloths chanted sacred Sanskrit prayers in front of huge granite idols. The stone gods were brilliantly dressed in bright red, yellow, purple, and green silks, flower garlands and jewelry encrusted with precious gems. I was in heaven. Brass bells ringing loudly, ancient fire rituals, and hundreds of other Tamil people packed into the temple, each vying for a glimpse of the idol. Looking up at the smiling face of Vishnu, who would give me whatever I asked for if I prayed hard enough, was something that filled my little 2-year-old heart with immense joy. My religious fervor wasn't restricted to just Hinduism. My Irish Aunt Bridget, my uncle had scandalously married outside the Tamil race, took me to Catholic Mass with her on Sundays. And here was yet another story, another house of God soliciting my devotion. A bit more gruesome, with blood dripping from the wounds of this white man hanging on a cross, but still otherworldly. It didn't matter that I couldn't understand a word of Latin, or that I wasn't allowed to go up with Auntie Bridgie to get that little piece of communion bread and sip of wine. She'd always sneak back a piece of wafer for me, whispering that this was where I belonged. One Sunday, Auntie Bridgie assured me it was okay that we were missing Mass. The Holy Mother had appeared to a farmer in a small town 3 hours away from Toronto, instructing him to gather the flock, for she would come again for those who believed. So, there we were in the car, driving for ages along a lone country road with the hopes that she with a capital S, would show herself to us. We joined hundreds of others who had staked out a claim with their picnic blankets and folding chairs in the farmer's field on that sunny fall afternoon. We never did see Mary, but Auntie Bridgie assured me that she was there in all our hearts. Frankly, just between you and me, I would have preferred to have actually seen what color robe the Blessed Virgin had chosen to wear that day. Being encouraged to have faith in something that was so incredibly fantastical was fuel for my wild imagination, especially as I got older and it started becoming clear that I wasn't really allowed to live my life in the story-filled world I loved. Ma would throw open my bedroom door on school nights and catch me in the act of jumping off my bed, dressed up as a Greek warrior practicing my sword-fighting drills, or ceremonially draping a towel over my head and shoulders, a lone Bedouin preparing to cross the Sahara. Then she'd reprimand me for neglecting my math homework. But I couldn't help myself, and I continued to find ways of blurring the lines between the fictitious realm in which I wanted to live and the real one I was born into. Our house backed onto a huge valley that bordered the Toronto Zoo, and in the evenings I'd hear elephants, lions, and wolves through my bedroom window. I was 12 when I was overcome with the need to play zookeeper myself and build a chicken coop in my backyard. My dad loved the idea, but there was much protesting from Ma. We already had a pet, she said, our little Shih Tzu named Misha, which, I had to share with my sisters, I argued. I wanted chickens for myself. They smell, child, Ma insisted impatiently, and they make noise, and I doubt it very much that we are allowed to have chickens in the backyard. I heaved the giant telephone directory onto the kitchen table one afternoon, looked up the number for the city zoning office, and eventually ended up speaking to a woman who sounded like she was fed up with the mundane questions she had to answer all day. "No," she grunted. "You're in a residential zone. No animals of a barnyard nature can be legally kept in your area." We lived in Scarborough, the most eastern suburb of Toronto, in an urban subdivision where the houses were only 20 feet apart. There was a pause, and then she continued. "But we won't know about it unless one of your neighbors complains." "Does that mean I can keep them, if they don't bother the neighbors?" I asked excitedly. "We won't know about it," she repeated, louder this time, "unless your neighbors complain." Ma finally caved, and I filled my coop with Araucana hens, a South American breed that lay beautiful blue and green-shelled eggs. The backyard, laden with the trumpeting of elephants, the occasional roar from a lion, and finally the soothing sound of 6 little hens clucking away, became my own little kingdom. I was mayor of Chicken Town, keeping a watchful eye on my flock and breaking apart petty squabbles as the hens established their pecking order. Giddy with excitement, I'd wake up every morning at 5 and rush down to the backyard to greet my hennies as they emerged from their brooding house, bleary-eyed. They'd move lethargically and let out long, drawn-out squawks. I'd echo back their noises while I filled up their feeding trough and replenished their water. A handful of kitchen scraps never failed to send them into an instant flurry, rummaging fervently through bits of cabbage, carrot skins, and apple cores. At 13, I took my love of quiet, nostalgic domestic practices like tending to livestock to the next level when I began volunteering at Black Creek Pioneer Village, a historic site just north of Toronto, where a collection of buildings from the 1800s depicted life in a typical rural Ontario village in the 19th century. Twice a month, I'd change into my pioneer costume and apprentice with the blacksmith, the cabinet maker, the baker, or the weaver. I first went to Pioneer Village on a school trip in 2nd grade, during a mandatory unit on pioneers. My classmates and I were sitting on the pine floor of the farmer's log cabin as the tour guide warned our class not to touch anything and then started her spiel. But I couldn't hear her. I was completely in awe of the huge squared pine logs that made up the walls and ceiling, the fieldstone fireplace, the flaking red paint on the harvest table, and the gnarly wooden bowl that sat on it. Everything here was 200 years old, yet I felt so at home. I was always more at peace in my imaginary worlds than beneath the actual roof I lived under. Things weren't always pleasant growing up. I must have been about 3 years old when my big sister and I were drawing on the concrete walls of our basement with sticks of chalk one evening. A door slammed loudly, jolting us out of our coloring days, and we turned to face each other, fearing we were about to be caught in the act. Ma was running down the stairs, still dressed in her office clothes, a knee-length blue and white dress and sheer black pantyhose. Come here, baby," Ma called to me, smiling. There was something disturbing about her smile, though. Her lips were quivering as she extended her arms toward me, her fingers frantically gesturing for me to run into her grasp. There was the usual sweetness in Ma's voice, but she was panting heavily. I dropped my chalk as she scooped me up and gently rested my head on the thick shoulder pad of her dress. I inhaled Ma's scent, a soothing mix of fresh laundry and Avon lipstick. Another door slammed, closer this time, and suddenly we could hear my dad's slurred shouting, booming down from the top of the stairs. "Come quickly, darling," Ma whispered to my sister, taking her by the hand while looking over her shoulder. I lifted my head to follow her gaze and caught sight of my dad, running at.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?